You dance on a river of wood, and the spinning shapes in the cold, dark water are your only bridge home. So you keep on dancing until the last log is in place and you can head for Millar Time.
Welcome to Pat's Cast, the unofficial Regina Pats podcast. It's episode 187. Chris here, Kevin there. How are we doing tonight, Kev?
We're not very far apart this time. We're preparing for a big interview here.
Yeah, Mr. Alan Millar. He requested to come on the show and discuss everything that's going on. He said, he wants to be transparent with the team. He wants to get, the story out there, what the plan is, what the plan has been, and just kind of appeal to the hardcore fan that's listening to us, that maybe doesn't watch regular media. Not that there's any media coming to these games or doing anything, but he wants to sit down with us and tell the story.
And it's pretty hard to get snippets from Dante's interviews on the radio broadcasts. Not everybody listens to the interview shows anymore or anything like that, so it's interesting that we have a chance to sit down with Al and discuss the state of the union, so to speak.
Yeah. So, this is going to be a good interview coming up for you guys. Hopefully it answers some questions. Obviously he can't answer every question that the fan base has, but I think he's really adamant on being transparent. Like you've seen that with the Vaughn situation. He put out an interview right away saying, hey, Dante asked him about the trade, and he said, whoa, let's go back to the start and let's explain the situation. And you can't ask for much more than that. Yeah, they're not going to get into what happened here or what happened there with the details. Nobody needs to know that kind of stuff. But he wants to explain, hey, something happened. This is what we had to do, or this is what we are doing going forward, stuff like that. So, that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully you guys enjoy the show.
Here's the interview with Pat's GM and VP of Hockey Ops, Alan Millar.
All right, pleased to welcome on Al Millar to the show. Welcome, Al.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time tonight. So, just kind of a State of the Union address. You kind of want to discuss some stuff that's been happening lately, kind of maybe go back to your tenure since you got here and stuff. So, kind of when you got the call first from the Pats, what were you kind of expecting kind of this process to be like? You looked at the team, you looked at the draft pick situation, and kind of were you hesitant or were you gung-ho for this kind of situation? What kind of were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I was never hesitant. Challenge is a challenge. If I thought anything was a challenge, it wouldn't have deterred me from considering the right opportunity. The right opportunity deals with ownership, people, facilities, the franchise, those things outside of what the inner workings of the job within the hockey operations are, were key factors as I went through the process. I really enjoyed my job with Hockey Canada. Obviously some things changed at Hockey Canada over, the couple of years that I was there. I've always really enjoyed managing at this level, and so when I went through the process and I considered the job and looked at, you always have a little bit of an idea going in what you think you're getting yourself into or what you're going into. You never really know until you're right in the middle of it, and so I knew, and through the process, my first contact on the job was from John Paddock. John and I built a real good relationship from, my tenure in Moose Jaw and the rivalry and getting to know. I have a lot of respect for John. He's a great person and a great hockey guy. That was my first contact, and, we had discussions, and, I knew looking from the outside that there was work to be done here. You saw going to the finals that, kind of where we're at today and what we're trying to do goes back to 2017. The team went to the WHL final in 2017. Now, the anomaly of that, guys, is not that they went to the final in 2017 and made moves to get there. They were hosting the Memorial Cup the following year.
Yeah.
So you have 2 years back-to-back where you utilize assets to try and win. then you go through a little bit of a down cycle, and you end up with the number 1 pick, and you get Bedard.
Yeah.
And then, with Connor here, I think everybody understood that the foundation of the team around Connor probably wasn't at a championship level. They weren't going to contend. But what you talk about is how they insulated Bedard to be as competitive as they could. So you take that process from 2017 to the two years that Bedard was here, and there's some work to be done after the fact. So that's what I've been doing really since I got here. I inherited the entire hockey ops staff, so the structure of the staff, the players, the 50-man list, the draft capital, all those things. For me, I continue to evaluate. I've been evaluating for, a year and a half now, going into the Christmas break here. And, ultimately we've strategized, changed a lot of things, started a process where we needed to add young players and draft capital at last year's deadline. We continue to build that. We will continue to build that. And what we're trying to do here is get the organization. For me, this is really, you got to look at it in 2 steps. We've got to get competitive again. Competitive is being a playoff team. And then how do we get from being competitive and building and then being a contender and giving ourselves to win a championship? If we toe the line, this is going to be a long process. We're trying to do the right things. We're doing it through difficult decisions in terms of adding those young players, adding that draft capital to help us get to where we want to, not over a 4, 5, 6 year period, but hopefully through a 2, 3 year period.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the Bedard thing, I don't want to say it was a bad thing, but it's delayed the proper process, hasn't it? And I know obviously fans are chomping at the bit. It's been a while since 17 and 18, and but now you're on the path now to tearing it down, doing it kind of the right way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was nothing wrong with the Bedard era. Nothing at all.
No, nothing at all.
You're right on, Chris.
Yeah.
When you, first of all, I had the privilege to work with Connor on a number of national teams, won 2 World Juniors with him, took him to the under-18s as a double underage, won a World Championship in Dallas with him there. You guys know the person, you guys know the player. His era in Regina in the WHL, going number 1 overall, the excitement around the franchise, the excitement around the Western Hockey League. He's a special player, once-in-a-lifetime, generational talent, and that will always be etched in the great lore of Pat's history.
Yeah, for sure.
Unfortunately, the first year was the COVID year, so it wasn't fully involved.
That
right?
didn't help either, right? But yeah, coming to the rink and watching him play every night was something, right? Like, I wanted to see that. I want to see him here. Obviously, not trading him and knowing what was to come if they didn't trade him, and obviously he didn't want to be traded, but you just knew it. But it was just so special just to see him play here with your own eyes every night, right? It was unbelievable.
Right. Yeah, and it's funny, Kevin, you talk about the COVID year. Well, he was supposed to be here for 22 or 24 games, but I pulled him out after 8 or 9 and took him to Dallas.
Yeah.
And I remember the first conversation I had with Ron Robinson about taking Connor as a double underage to under 18 Worlds. You guys might not remember, but the Q was playing a full schedule.
Yeah.
So they didn't release their players for under 18. And, my first look at Connor at this level was in the bubble. And I'm like, I got to consider him. I had just taken the job with Hockey Canada. This was I was managing my first team at that under 18 Worlds. And Ron Robinson, I'm sure he won't mind me telling him the story. The first conversation I had with Ron, he wasn't real happy with me that we were considering Connor. And we worked with the commissioners in terms of a management policy committee, because majority of our players, the majority of our staff come out of the CHL. So Hockey Canada and the CHL commissioners work really closely together. So I remember those conversations about taking Connor and double underage, and so I'm finalizing Dave Barr as the head coach of that team. And I remember telling Barzy at the end of the day, I said, Barzy, I said, I just got to be upfront with you on one thing. I said, you're going to get a real special kid here, double underage. I said, I've kind of put my neck on the line here in terms of with the commissioners that he's ready to play at this level. So I said, I don't think I'm burdening you with anything. I said, but this guy can't be the 13th forward. He's got to have a chance to play. And we all know how that worked out. He was outstanding. The backhand goal in the game against Russia, in the gold medal game, was and from that, guys, you know that was energy from him being pissed off that he didn't score on that penalty shot.
Yeah,
And you saw it. And the other thing about that, guys, is that if that is the last time Canada and Russia that Russia has played in a world championship.
Right.
So that was supposed to be the start of Mishkov Bedard, under 18s, juniors, world championships, and obviously we know that's been stalled for the reasons we know. And that podcast is this. We're not talking politics, so we can stick to hockey.
Exactly. No. So you said you went to Hockey Canada there for a little bit after being in Moose Jaw and in the OHL. How easy was it just to jump back into this level? Did you consider another level, or were the Pats reaching out to you and you said, "Oh, okay, this is an opportunity"? So
yeah, you know what? I think I was really happy at Hockey Canada. I really enjoy it. I don't know if you guys have ever come across Scott Salmon, the senior VP of Hockey Ops there. Great leader, great person, real close friend. We had a great relationship, you know, I think just with some of the things that were going on at Hockey Canada, some people reached out, a few teams in the league reached out that if I was interested in considering a manager's job in the league again, and at that time my eyes and ears were open, and so I had some discussions. Obviously, the discussions went further with Sean and Gavin Semple and Gord Pritchard and the crew here. And I was excited about it. I mentioned earlier at the start of the podcast here, I really enjoy managing at this level. I talked about when I took the job, I talked about the points along the way that are exciting, you know, draft day, trade deadline, opening night, the opening day of training camp, all those things. I enjoy that process of, you know, building a team. You know, I always talk about, you know, coaches work in the moment. I work in the moment as well, but I have to work with a vision and a big picture in mind. And so all those things, the relationships at this level, you know, players coming in at 15 or 16, graduating at 19 and 20, those are special as well. So it was, it's something I really enjoy, and I'm glad I'm doing it.
So not long after you were hired here, you announced Brad as the Pats head coach, promoted him. Was that an easy decision, or was that one of the ones you thought about? Because a lot of times when new GMs come in, they make the moves, they bring in their own guys and stuff like that. Was it an easy decision for you?
You know what, Kevin? Full transparency on how that all played out. I knew Brad a little bit through Sask Hockey when he was with the Patsies. I had Jaden Hobblegawaks with the Patsies after we traded for him from Kamloops. So when I came in, and this was part of the process with John and I working together in the transition, Brad was going to be here as the head coach on a one-year deal. And so that gave, and so for me, you know, the part of that was the respect for John and John's belief in the process and John's belief in Brad. And so that gave me a year to work with Brad. It gave me a year to work with Ken Snyder. It gave me a year to work with Dale McMullen and the scouting staff. So everybody in the organization, there was a year for us to work together and for me to evaluate. So really the optimum decision in terms of Brad for me came this past summer, you know, and moving forward with him, you know, as the head coach. And at that time I had gotten to know him. I believe in him as a person. You know, I believe he's got runway in terms of his development as a head coach at this level. So, you know, that was a good process for me. I think it was a good process for Brad. And you know, now we work together in terms of those baby steps, in terms of how we dive into this rebuild, the challenges, the ups and downs, the long nights that we've had, the young lineups, balancing winning with development, all those things. And what I would say, above and beyond Brad as a person and Brad as a coach, Brad really had a very good understanding in terms of what needed to be done here. And what I respected about that, guys, is that for a coach, again, I talk about coaches in the moment, sometimes coaches don't have that big picture view, because traditionally, whether it's, you know, cross sports, whether it's managers, ownership, a fan base, they don't usually have a lot of patience with a coach that doesn't win very often.
That's true.
And sometimes they don't understand that the reasons why the team might not be winning might not have anything to do with the quality of the coach. Like, there are situations where it could be coaching, there are situations where it's player personnel. There are other factors to why a team is good or not that doesn't only fall on the head coach or even follow on the manager. So Brad had a really good understanding and was 100% bought into knowing what he would have to do as a head coach over the next 2, 3, 4 years to work with me as the manager to get this thing right.
Now, you didn't make too many changes. You brought in a Ryan Smith. Like you said in your press conference, you wanted to bring in some more experience, supplement the current staff that you had here. How easy was it to bring in a guy like that?
That was easy for me. I didn't think Ryan Smith would be available. I thought he'd still be the head coach of Spokane. I have a lot of respect for Matt Barsley, the GM there. Tough decision for him. Him and I talked about Ryan through the process. I have a lot of time for Ryan. I was involved in bringing him into some national programs at Hockey Canada, and you know, we made a tough decision on Evan McFeeters. But when I made the decision that we're going to move forward with Brad as the head coach, Brad still being a young head coach, I wanted to surround him with a stronger, experienced person to give him the best of, to surround him with the best people possible to make him better, to make him be able to do his job at his best. You know, with McFeeters, with Snyder, and this is, you know, and I think I've said this publicly, and I said this to Brad and Ken and at the time, was, you know, I really saw a hole in our staff to have that true right-hand man for Brad, like that true number one assistant coach, associate coach, and Ryan became available. Ryan ended up being that guy. So Chris, that was an easy decision. That was exactly the type of coach I was looking for to bring in here to align with our group and support Brad. Where we really dove into the biggest changes was on the scouting staff.
Yeah.
And you know, like.
So what was kind of the thinking? You know, you've really kind of pared it down. You know, a lot, maybe less size, but maybe less opinions too. Kind of focus on, you know, try to focus on having a vision with a smaller group of people. Is that kind of what the thinking was there, or?
It was a process along the way, and what I did along the way in terms of, I had a vision in terms of how I wanted to structure the staff, and you guys could see that I've kind of set it up similar to when I brought Jason Ripplinger into Moose Jaw as an assistant GM. Did the same with Dale Durkach here. But that process involved evaluating every draft pick in the last 10 to 12 years, every move that was made, players that were listed, player trades, to get an idea of how we got here and why we got here. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and say that anybody did a bad job, or I'm not going to sit here and criticize anybody. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's easy to draft in terms of drafting 14-year-olds.
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of tough, right? Like
it is a challenge, but at the end of the day, unequivocally, guys, I felt we needed a new structure. I felt we needed a new leader, and ultimately, I felt that collectively, from the GM to the assistant GM to the head scout to our area scouts, we needed to do a better job. We needed to scout better. We needed to draft better, and I looked at that structure, looked at how we wanted to do things. Chris, you mentioned a tighter group, a smaller group, less voices, but ultimately what the new structure allowed us to do in terms of going with less people, bringing Dale Durkach in his new role, is essentially it was able for us to put 2 people in the marketplace full-time working on scouting, drafting, and our player personnel. Okay. So, you've got Dale McMullen on the border there in BC and Alberta and Cranbrook. You've got Dale working out of here, supporting me around the team here, taking a lead role in terms of the drafting of players and our draft preparations and that. Those 2 guys are going to see more games, talk to more people collectively than I think any other team in the league. And they're both quality people. They're both well respected. So to be able to put that structure, deploy those guys into those roles, they have a good relationship. They spent some time together when Dale was here for 1 year as a traveling scout between gigs in the NHL. I feel real confident in what we've built there, and those 2 guys leading the group.
So Durkach was kind of a key for you this summer? Like he was like one of the keys? Him and Ryan Smith were kind of keys to the whole process?
Huge keys, Kevin. One thing I've always believed as a manager is that you surround yourself with the best people possible. You give them the resources to do their job properly. You let them do their jobs. You hold them accountable when necessary. But you have to surround yourself with the best people possible. So those were 2 very key areas in the offseason for us. When I looked at the Ryan Smith hire, talked about that being a key area in terms of the coaching staff and extending Brad as head coach. And then with Durkach, that's where, and I had a vision of that person, again, probably similar to, when I picked up the phone and called Glenn Hanlon, the GM of Vancouver at the time, and asked for permission to talk to Rip. That type of experienced guy around drafts and building teams, with the success that they had in Vancouver with Scott Bonner and Jason Ripplinger, brought Jason into Moose Jaw, and then so that vision for that person, I had 3 or 4 names on a list, guys that had extensive experience in the WHL, had success building teams, some guys that had NHL experience, and my first meeting with Dale, to see his passion for the franchise, to see his excitement in the opportunity, even though he had term left on his deal with Columbus, Don Waddell was great to give me permission to move forward with Dale, and I thank Don and the Blue Jackets for that. Dale's been an excellent fit for our hockey club.
Good. It's always nice to bring in. I mean, he was with the team as a coach for a while and a scout, and it's always nice to bring back alumni, right? And a guy that's very well respected around this city.
Yeah, and I've said to people, I said, don't think we only hired Dale Durkach because his banner's in the corner. And people could be thinking, oh, it's a good PR move, and maybe it sells a few more tickets and all those things. And if it does, great. But at the end of the day, he's got a really important job for our hockey club right now. We have 9 picks in the first 2 rounds of the next 2 drafts. Yeah. We have 2 firsts, 3 seconds in this upcoming draft. We have 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and I think 2 or 3 thirds in the following draft, or 2 thirds. So when we finalize these last trades the last few weeks, I've said to both Dales, McMullen and Dirk, I said, okay, time for you guys to get to work.
Yeah.
So rewinding.
And they're excited, obviously. They're excited. with the draft capital we've been able to build. And, when I'm sure we'll get to talking about, the roster and some of the moves we made, but, when you look at the youth we've added to the roster, but we've got a vision around, these upcoming next 2 drafts. What does those 9 players look like 4 or 5 years from now? It's a Bantam draft. We talk about that.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit 100% on all 9, but we've got to do a real good job there, and that could be the foundation of a very good Pats team for a long time.
Very true. Rewinding a little bit, how key was the Alexander Suzdalev deal last season? How key was that? How did that come about? Just he wasn't around, and then all of a sudden there was rumblings that he was going to be back in North America, and then all of a sudden the Pats make this big announcement. How key was that to really
kickstarting this whole process?
Give it an extra kickstart.
It was huge.
Getting something like really tangible for basically a guy that wasn't even here.
What wasn't even here. Really, at the end of the day, if you look at after January 10th, probably wasn't going to have much value on a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs, whether he was here or not. Yeah. If he was here from the start of the year, which I think he should have been.
I know Kevin and I were looking at his stats weekly, like he hasn't played, he hasn't dressed, he hasn't done this, and we were like, what's going on? Yeah. Is he coming back? Like, we'd love to have him back, right?
Yeah, and then the kid, the kid in his home country, because he hasn't played very much, doesn't get on their World Junior team in his last year of eligibility. But so, if Stutzelev was here from October 1 on, kind of came from Caps camp and came in here, we would have rode him as best we can to be as competitive as possible and then see where we at the deadline.
Yeah, for sure.
We didn't have that luxury. So worked closely with Newport Sports along the way. When I first got the job, it started with Washington that they felt he was going to be ready to play in Hershey. He wasn't ready to play in Hershey, as we know. He was a healthy scratch for 12 straight games. We were really disappointed when he got assigned to Europe Pro League in Sweden. But Newport Sports, Greg Landry, Craig Oster stayed in touch with me along the way, and they whispered in my ear along the way that, the pro team in Mora, he was in and out of the lineup, 4th line, 13th forward, that he might become available leading up to the deadline. I got the call around the whatever it was, Christmas time there, that that if we could move him to the right team, he'd come back. He'd be coming back, and then we were able to put that deal together with Saskatoon, Kevin, and it was a little bit of a difficult deal because there wasn't a ton of interest in him, just because a lot of the contenders had 2 quality import players.
Yeah.
And but Saskatoon was looking for an upgrade. They knew Stutz very well from the playoffs the year before, and obviously being in the same division. So to bank that first round pick, to bank another 3 and a 4, to get Dayton Deschamps in that deal, it was real important. So. So that really kind of, you're right. That was almost a lot for nothing.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
It was a lot,
a lot.
So it's going to be really helpful in the big picture.
For sure.
And that's the first we have. One of the first we have in 26 is Saskatoon's. I don't wish ill will on any team in the league. Maybe I do. So hopefully that, I give them credit. Back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. Good team now.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to maybe see a little bit of a step back and
that
draft pick be high in the 26 draft for us.
For sure.
So jumping ahead to this season, the Howe deal. Obviously, like you said, it kind of had to happen, and it was most likely going to happen. But the whole Hamilton thing, like you said, it was on a deadline, and it kind of came down to the last minute. Like, was that a different kind of trade that you've done before? Like, not a lot of players have a deadline per se. Sometimes like that. Was there a different process this time around?
It was a crazy 2 or 3 hours, Chris. Like, Gary Davidson and I had been talking about how for a while, and I pushed it in terms of, we wanted our mindset was to remain as competitive as we could, and to do that, we wanted to have Howe, as long as we could and until we got the right deal. A little bit of a curveball with him breaking his wrist, and I was missing him for those 12, 13, 14 games. Then he came back. I knew he was going to play on the World Junior team. That wasn't a surprise for me yesterday. He was very. The management group for the national junior team felt all along that Tanner was going to be an important player for them.
Yeah, I think. Sorry to interrupt, but I think he's like the perfect third, fourth liner for that team, right?
He's a
Brings
perfect
skill.
200 foot. He can do
He's
everything.
the perfect
basically.
PK guy,
Score.
right?
Versatility,
Yeah.
flexibility, PK, complement top players
Yep.
if needed, play against the other team's top players,
Yeah.
take face-offs,
Mr. Versatility.
kill penalties. So, we talked about the fact that if the day Tanner left for World Junior Selection Camp, if we hadn't traded him, he wasn't going to play another game.
Yeah.
So, and then the Hamilton situation came real quick at us. So we essentially went from, if it's a scale of 0 to 10, we went from 0 to 9.5 like in 5 minutes.
Wow.
like 3 o'clock on a game day, phone call, and essentially was Gary Davidson telling me, Alan, he's going tonight. So the number one priority for us is he had made an offer. He said our number one option is this deal. But I believe Gary. I don't think there was any BS or put a gun to our head. He said, if you pass on it, he goes, I got to move on with another deal. And he said, I've got to do it in a timely fashion because I don't want to lose that deal if you decide to pass. So we're obviously dealing with a game day.
This throws a big wrench into things, right?
There is a little bit of negotiation going on. So we get to about 6:10, and I call Sean Semple, and Sean's been great and very supportive of what we're doing here. I always give him a heads up when we're making a move. In this instance, a move of this magnitude, we want to get him on the phone and go over it with him and make sure everybody's comfortable with it. So I get Sean on the phone. Sean's 100% supportive. I call Gary, and I'm thinking that I call Gary, and we're going to be good to go, and I can get to Tanner in a timely fashion before he's got all his gear on and he's getting ready for warm-up. What happens is I call Gary, and Gary says, okay, good. Now he's got to do the same process that I just did with Mr. Semple.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to do with the hierarchy at Calgary Sports and Entertainment. So that pushed it to essentially my phone rang, confirmed the deal. The team was lining up to go out for warm-up. I was on the phone with Gary Davidson, or I was reading a text from Gary. Brad was in my office. Gord Pritchard was in my office. Tristan Fry. And I was like, Brad, go pull Howie from warm-up. So, not ideal.
Yeah.
Not ideal. I apologized to Tanner after the fact in terms of that's not how I wanted to play out. He understood. He was a pro. He knew that he was going to be moved at some point. It's not ideal in that situation. It's not ideal for our team to see that happen. Not ideal, for the team to see me 10 minutes before the game to address the situation. But kids found a way, rallied. We got to overtime against a very good, or shootout against a very good Tri team. That's how that 2 or 3 hours played out, Chris. And if not that anybody would probably read it, but if I ever did a book, that's a good chapter right there.
Yeah.
Has anything like that ever happened? Like you've pulled a player from warm-ups or anything like that?
No, I've never had it that tight before.
No mid-game deals or anything like that. Like in baseball, you see guys getting pulled mid-game or anything like
I've
that.
I've finalized trades during games or around games, but I've never
Nothing like
I've
that.
never pulled anybody out of a game. I've pulled players off the ice from practice on a non-game day.
Yeah.
When they've been moved, but nothing like what went down here that night.
How difficult was it to deal with the leak on social media with the breaking news of the trade? How difficult was that?
Well, it wasn't that hard because it was wrong.
But it just seemed like it snowballed.
It was the wrong information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
It's unfortunate these
it's
days, right?
so bad.
Stuff happens, and being late at night. Like, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know how the process works. Like, can you call the WHL at 7 o'clock and say, hey, this deal's done, and get it out, or it has to wait till the morning, kind of thing?
Yeah, you know what? We were playing. Calgary was in a situation where they needed to or wanted to wait till the morning. Calgary's a little bit of a different scenario where, working out of the Saddle Dome, a lot of their players are 40, 50 minutes away from the rink. We knew that speculation was going to take off when Howe was a late scratch. We were hopeful that we could get away with tweak something, lower body, announce it in the morning. But that just blew up, and then, as we know, there was a breaking news report that went out that essentially said we had traded Corbin Vaughn, I believe, and Howe for what we got just for Howe, essentially. And obviously Corbin wasn't part of the deal.
Yeah.
So, kind of away from the trades for a minute here.
We're gonna jump around a little bit here.
It's all good, guys. All good. I'm enjoying.
Kind of the biggest story this season is the NCAA ruling. Like, it's not surprising that it's happened. It was an archaic rule. Now, I follow college football closely. That's kind of turned into a bit of a gong show with the way it's playing out. Basically, everybody's a free agent every year, and the whole NIL thing.
Marshall's pulling out of a bowl game.
I just saw that. Yeah,
Their
25
coach,
guys.
25
left.
guys in the porthole. Their coach left, and they're pulling out of a bowl game.
Yeah, they don't have enough players.
Like that.
Wow.
That can't be good for college football.
No, I know, right? And it's just, you can't attach yourself to a team, players, because they're literally changing teams every year. It's kind of a gong show, but that being said, it's changing the landscape of the CHL and junior hockey, right?
Absolutely.
How do you now? I know it's new times, but how do you kind of manage your roster, or how going forward, even like into the draft now this coming year? What has that changed for you guys now?
Well, ultimately, the most important thing in all of this is that you have to continue to have a standard of your program with your players, your development model, your player environment, where you ensure that you don't give players reasons to leave. That's ultimately the most important thing for me. Number one on the board in terms of this, the change in the rule is continue doing what we're doing, build what we're doing, improve what we're doing, and make sure that the loyalty goes both ways, and we don't get into situations where players at 18 and 19 feel they're going to consider other options that they can potentially probably just walk away from. I don't see any time in the near future where there's going to be a player transfer agreement between the CHL and the NCAA. And a lot of that goes back to the lawsuits, the portal, the freedom of player movement. Look at those complications around a player transfer agreement between the two parties. So you got to have that level in terms of your program, and in terms of your environment and how you And success is part of that. Success is part of it in terms of winning, being competitive, sending guys to the NHL, sending guys to national teams, all those things. So that's important. And then obviously we now have the ability that the majority or a high percentage of the best young players in North America, the U.S. market is going to open up a lot more here. You're still going to have those guys that are going to want to go to the USHL and go to the NCAA at 18 or 19. You're still going to have the National Development Program in Ann Arbor that's going to eat up some of the top U.S. players. But in terms of adapting, preparations for a draft, expanding our scouting network in the U.S., we have Red Gordon in Colorado who kind of leads the U.S. market for us. We've just added Ryan Rintoul, former teammate of Ryan Smith in the Minnesota area. He's real well connected around the Shaddix program. His two daughters played there. They're both on NCAA soccer scholarships right now. So that's a guy that's entrenched in the NCAA environment and the sporting environment in the NCAA. Adapting in terms of, a focus on American players that, now when you're listing an American player, now when you're considering drafting an American player, the percentages of the ability to get them are significantly increased at 16 and 17 years old. We needed to know the American market to a certain point where I really only wanted to, know the top end guys. And we always had a focus with our U.S. draft, and we still will have somewhat of a focus around number one goalie, top 4D, top 6 forward. We'd also look outside of those numbers, guys, in terms of that, what I would call a difference maker in terms of a power forward or a 6'5" shutdown hard defenseman. In terms of how we looked at American players. But, when we look at preparing for our drafts now, where Americans could have been a risk-reward pick, now it's more reward and little risk. So you have to be prepared.
And then even looking at the prospects draft here in Canada, the Canadian kids, now there's no kind of question, well, do we take a flyer on this kid? Is he coming? Now you can pretty much just outright take the best player, right?
100%.
Without any questions.
100%. I think that and the landscape is going to be good for young players. For the most part, and there are the anomalies along the way. Is Celebrini an anomaly? Well, not really, because he played in the NCAA at 18. The anomaly for me is when real good players end up playing not at the highest level for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. Their development is hindered. Now those kids have the ability to play at our level at 16, play 3 or 4 years. That landscape of development, and if they're not ready for the American Hockey League or the NHL at 19 or 20, then they continue on at a high level. And think about that player that's maybe 23, 24 years old for the NHL, that's played 3 or 4 years major junior and played 3 or 4 years in the NCAA. If this is handled properly and it's handled professionally, this could be great for the game. So Chris, you're absolutely right that less risk in terms of players keeping their options open come draft day. Now players are going to be at your development camps. They're going to be at your training camps. They're not going to be worried about the what I call the fictitious 48-hour rule that everybody would, kid would come to a development camp and his parents would want to pay for the last night in the hotel and the last meal because it was outside of the 48 hours. We can now have players play exhibition games without signing because they're not going to lose their eligibility. The competitiveness around building our team, the competitiveness around a training camp just goes up considerably.
Never thought of that.
So there's a lot of great things here. The downside is the lack of a player transfer agreement, the competitiveness that there may be in terms of the recruiting battle where some schools could be aggressively coming after the elite players at this level when they're 18, 19 years old. that's going to be a challenge. We've talked to a number of schools that that want to work with us, don't want to talk about players until their eligibility is finished. But there are other schools, maybe other high-profile schools, and you guys have heard some of the rumors out there that that are going to be more aggressive in terms of looking at some of those 17, 18-year-old players.
I know some of those schools and those boosters, they have a lot of money. You look at it in the football side of things, like there's a lot of money. I don't know how much money's going into the hockey side of things, but obviously there's millions upon millions going into the football side.
Well, now with this stuff happening, maybe there will be more money going into the hockey programs, right? So
well, and that's you know, and obviously that's a marketplace that could be, for me, could be real damaging for the game.
yeah,
Like if we start to get into you know, those recruiting challenges, and we start to get into models where you know, I think the trajectory from college football to the NFL is a lot different than the CHL to NCAA, or CHL to U Sport, or CHL to the American League, and the American League to the NHL. I think some of those things could be real damaging, but there are a lot of unknowns right now. There's a lot of things to wait and see how this all plays out, and we'll learn as we go. But we certainly know, as I talked about, the areas that we need to adapt in terms of the rule change, and just like Billy Bean, Brad Pitt, and Moneyball said, adapt or die.
Yep, definitely.
yeah, it's only been a few months, right? So lots can change.
Yeah.
What did you think about Braxton kind of being the first guy? I know there was the lawsuit and stuff. There's the players out of the OHL brought that in. But what did you think of Braxton being the first guy to announce, I'm going to go to college?
Yeah, I did. I thought, I thought it was great for Braxton and his family. I think sometimes you maybe forget that because Braxton's been here for so long, you forget,
he is an American.
He is
right?
an American.
Yeah.
Exactly,
and so grew up with the NCAA in mind, and we talked about it at the time. Credit to Braxton on initiating that communication with several schools, just by way of introduction.
Yeah.
Hearing about the potential rule changes, want to introduce myself, want to create a dialogue on what my options might look like. ASU took the next step with him, and he was able to move forward and be the first guy out of the CHL to get that type of commitment. So great stuff for an excellent young man.
Yeah, he seems to be a pretty smart kid, doesn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's got he's got a good head on his shoulders. Great family. Going to be successful at whatever he ends up doing in his career.
Yeah. Going back to the trades kind of situation, when you're bringing in kids, how much goes into the off-ice stuff? Like how much do you spend asking around they're kind of the background of the player off the ice?
Yeah, we that's something that we've talked a lot in the last year and a half in terms of collectively with Dale Durkach coming in, working with our coaches, the research, the homework on players, just in terms of doing our due diligence. Young people are different today. And you want to make sure that you always want to make sure you're dealing with good people, but at the same time, there's a level of commitment to be successful at this level that comes with a commitment to your own development and in terms of your work ethic and not just assuming that because you're a good player that you're entitled to this and that when I get to that level. So whether it's the work that our scouts do at the grassroots, whether it's talking to coaches, sometimes when for example, for me, we bring Caden Brown and Julian Mays in from Everett. Well, I can't have a better connection than my former World Junior head coach, who's now at Bowling Green, and Dennis Williams.
Yeah.
So Dennis is still very loyal to Everett, but at the same time is supportive of Mike Frazier and Everett. But a good resource in terms for me. So you build those connections along the way. Able to get good information, and sometimes, Chris, it's not only about making sure you're getting good people and good kids, but sometimes there's things in a player's life or a player's career that it's just important for us to know. Like sometimes you get a player that how you challenge them, right? Like how you communicate with them, how he learns. Some guys are visual, right? Some guys you can talk them through it on the ice. Some guys need to see it on video. Sometimes there's those things that are important for us to know, and is important for our coaches to know. Like, like the game has changed so much. Like, there's a time and place to challenge a player. There's a time and place to challenge your team, and sometimes you have to raise your voice once in a while. Okay, but a lot of times in today's game now, like in the old days when you went in and you smashed the stick rack and you threw the Gatorade jug across the room, and you went up and down the room. Well, today, that's not how we communicate with young people now. That's not the proper way to challenge young people. There's a high percentage of young people that will just shut down on you. In those situations.
Yeah.
So that's not what we do here. That's not what we want to do. So all that information is important in terms of when you get a young player in here, how he's going to fit into your environment and how your environment can best suit him. So that extends to where he's at in school, what we're doing in school. That extends to the Billet family, and did the Billet family have kids? How did he grow up? Should he be with another player? All those things are important to make a player feel as comfortable and as confident as possible in our environment to give him the best ability to succeed.
You mentioned school. How important is the Pat school here at the Brand Center? How important is it for the team to have that?
Well, it's unbelievably important. Not like the education component is important regardless of how you set it up or the people you have involved. But for us to be able to have Karen and Dwayne Hinger here essentially full-time with their background and their careers in education and vice principals and principals, and to have them to be able to work with our players every day, be able to support them all the time in terms of their academic needs, working with their home schools, working with their eligibility for university, the new challenges that come with the NCAA, the eligibility around a clearinghouse and the NCAA, getting up to speed on all that stuff. You look at different scenarios where guys are doing school online. Some teams still have guys going to school, but for us, we're able to bring 7 or 8 guys in here and have 2 people essentially work with them full time. I think it's special, and I think it's invaluable to the players and their families in terms of making sure that their academics are as important as what we do on the ice.
Yeah, it's probably a little easier for the kids rather than actually physically going to a school and then having to leave class to come to practice and work with that modified schedule where it's just a lot easier when, like you said, you got 2 with 7, 8 kids, 2 teachers, 7, 8 kids, and it's just a little more focused, isn't it?
100% focused. And where else in the academic system can you get, let's say we have 8 students in the room. Well, we've got a teacher for every 4 of them.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
Where can you get those percentages?
It's 1 to 40, it seems, these days.
So it's and with Karen and Dwayne, I can't thank them enough. I can't credit them enough for the environment they create. And you guys probably can't even imagine, like the 3 or 4 hours they would work with the kids here every morning. The other extras that they do with, supervising tests or players going to their house to write an exam or need help finishing a project or that final class to graduate or the time they spend on the phone with the players' parents or their homeschool to make sure they're eligible to return home and graduate with their friends at their school in BC. It's a lot of work.
It's so much easier than trying to enroll kids from all over Canada and all over the States.
Kevin.
Try to throw them in like a high school here. It's almost impossible now. I
Yeah,
think.
no, they've done a great job establishing the Pat school here.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the on ice stuff, it really seems you've really stockpiled the 17s. The 17s have been available, it seems, and there's always, when those new rule came in after the 17 season, where they have to be accepting a trade or request a trade. So is it maybe more this year that you've noticed that 17s have been available, or that you're just more focused on 17s? And then the second part of that is the 17 age group is quite stockpiled.
Yeah, I don't know if I've noticed that there's been more available. I think the Hamilton one probably stands out just because, how often you would see a fourth overall defenseman available. So that one played out as it did, and just fit really well for. Even though we had to give up Howe, just really fit in with where we were and what we were building. Some other situations, some of the other 17-year-olds, just maybe we saw something in them that other teams didn't. They were maybe a little bit in and out of the lineup. Eglin was an unsigned player playing under 18 and wasn't even in Wenatchee. The Mays Temple deal for us was something we felt was good for both teams, was good for both young men, and gave us a little bit of a different player that we thought we needed in terms of that high-end hockey sense, puck skills, vision, being able to make plays, so that's it. It's Chris. It's really just how discussions went and how things played out. We can't trade for 16-year-olds.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for us, when if we're looking at unsigned prospects that are 08s and 09s, but the majority of unsigned of the best 08 and 09 prospects are usually signed. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot in that market. Mm-hmm. There can be some guys in that market, like us pulling Deschamps into that deal last year. He was unsigned. We were able to put him into the Stützle deal, fortunately. So with the 16-year-old roster players not available to be, when you're rebuilding, you're looking to add, like our priority has been young players, draft capital. So the youngest players that we're able to acquire in the WHL this year are 07s. Yeah. So that's why there's been a focus on that and a focus on getting as many high draft picks as we can.
Speaking of the Temple Mays deal, how did that come about? Was it something you guys initiated, or was it an Everett thing? Was that one of those mutual kind of interests?
Mays and Temple's names came up in the Jackson Vaughan talks. And it was a situation where I didn't want to go down that path at that time. So I essentially said to Mike Frazier, the GM in Everett, let's pull this discussion out. And because of the situation we were in with the Vaughns at the time, I wanted to move forward as quickly as I could. Yeah. Corbin took a lot longer for different reasons. So Mike agreed, so we pulled those discussions out of that deal, focused on the Vaughn for Brown and a first, got that done, tabled the other discussions around the two 17-year-olds, gave it a few days. I sent Mike a text, said, hey, what are your thoughts about getting this back on the table? And I essentially said to him, because they're a very good team, obviously. Yeah. I said, or is Mays a chip for you to add
later,
to try and win? And he was open to it, and we started our discussions again and ultimately did that deal.
Yeah. I know that was a bit of a shock, that Temple was being moved. But I know even Kevin and I were like, okay, you got Reese Hamilton the 4th, you got Temple the 5th overall pick. These are your building blocks, and then a week later,
trade him.
God. So it is what it is. But I mean,
you know what, Chris? Yeah, I knew, and we knew that it would surprise some people, and I'm not sure, for whatever reason, that Cole was ever going to fulfill his potential here. It just didn't seem to be a fit for whatever reason. I think Cole's a great kid. I think he's going to be a very good player in the WHL. He's on a very good team in Everett right now. And for us, at the end of the day, I see Cole as a real good skater, in terms of being able to drive and use his speed and create. And I talked about Julian in terms of that skill set in that sense, and a guy that can manage the game. And he just turned 17 years old on Saturday, guys.
Yeah.
So he's played in this league for half a year as a 15-year-old. He's played in the league at over a point a game as a 16-year-old in the league. What are we going to have on our hands when he's 18 and 19? They're different players. Both GMs felt that both players could use a change. I hope both players do well. I think people will look at this trade and will always evaluate Mays and Temple, and I think it has the ability to be good for the Regina Pats, the Everett Silvertips, Cole Temple, and Julian Mays. But for us, it was adding a different dynamic to our young group, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I know. Even watching him on the road trip on the stream, like, it's a different skill set. He looks
Completely different player.
Yeah, for sure. And we got an interview with Steve Hamilton. They're really pumped about Temple, so it's almost one of those just hockey trades, right?
It's a hockey trade, and there isn't a lot of them. The majority of trades in junior hockey are buying and selling. And the deadlines are built around buying and selling. Who are contenders? Who's out of the playoffs and who's trading who.
Yeah.
And we're in that. We've been in that situation. We've done those deals. This one just ended up being a true hockey deal. And the other thing too is, I'm hopeful that what you'll see as we continue to build here is it's not only about the two individual players, but how they complement, the other players that we're going to build with here.
Yeah.
Back to the Vaughn situation a little bit. Did that change your perspective on the rebuild at all?
Or did it change the plan?
Did it change the plan? Were you?
Yeah.
Of course, you didn't expect stuff to happen, right?
Yeah.
You probably figured maybe down the road things would happen, like trade or whatever, for the rebuild, right? Did it change your thought process on what you were doing at that point in time? Because it was really unexpected.
Yeah, it did. It didn't change my perspective, Kevin, because I didn't know we were going to have to deal with it. That was probably the biggest thing, was that I guess I thought somewhere along the way we might have to look at moving Jackson and Corbin. Was that going to be in their 18-year-old year or 19-year-old? I wasn't sure. We were always working towards probably more likely in their 19-year-old year. But obviously we had things happen that made the decision for us to move forward now. I think it's given us a little bit of an ability to, I think it's. I want to say this the right way. In terms of Jackson and Corbin are unique because they're because of the type of players they are, and they're kind of alpha type young guys, and I think that with what we need to do here and how we're doing it, and trading Tanner Howe and bringing in all these young guys, I always thought in the back of my mind that what we're doing here might not fit in Corbin and Jax's what they would think would be their best interest for the next year and a half. So it kind of been in the back of my mind, and then we had the situation that played out, and so I think it's given us the ability to add, it's added 2 good 19-year-old players that are going to be options for us as 20-year-olds. It's put a real important first and second round picks in the bank. So I think the deals are going to keep us competitive this year and next year, give it as value draft capital. And I think at the end of the day, we're all able to move forward without a lot of animosity or controversy. Jackson and Corbin I like them. Like, I really do. I enjoyed working with them. I told the story to somebody about us being at Soul Harbor's soup kitchen and what we were doing. That 3 or 4 hours we were there to support the people in the city, and Corbin and Jackson and Bridgman and Babcock and Brad Haroff and us, and I really enjoyed interacting with the players that night, and Jackson and Corbin, and I'm glad we're able to move on. Those players are getting settled in with franchises that are closer to home. They're on very good teams. I think both of them have a chance to win. From my end, we all move forward and wish them the best.
Another kind of question mark maybe some people have is the import situation. You started the year last year with only one. You picked up one with the Saskatoon deal there, and then only having one going into this season again. Were there deeper discussions bringing in an import this year or not, or what's kind of the situation there?
Yeah, there's if we were going to bring in another import, we right now when we get ready for games in that, I mentioned earlier that we're, the balance between being competitive and try and win, and the balance of make sure our young players are getting the opportunities to get better. Like, that's another big part of a rebuild, right? Like, everybody can say, okay, rebuild, you make this trade, you trade Howe, you trade Stützle, you trade this, and you get these picks and you get these young players. Well, a big part of the rebuild is well, the next step is are these players getting better? Are you developing them? Are they, when they come in at 16, 17, 18, are they going to be what we need to be when they're 18, 19, 20? So we're real cognizant of that, Chris. So that's why we haven't been all that aggressive. I think the import situation is, we'll have a clean slate at the end of this season with 2 open spots. We have Nestor still in Muskegon, who's I would think is going to be no later than a second-round NHL pick. He's still a very raw player, very good player with a lot of upside. I don't think it's been the worst thing in his development to play in Muskegon. They do a good job there. They have a good program. We'll see how that plays out with Nestor and his family this summer and after the NHL draft. And obviously he's a guy that's committed to the NCAA, so that's a different dynamic now than it was when we drafted him. And we drafted him with the thought process in mind that the rule was going to change, and we felt good that we would have him here as an 18-year-old. So we'll go through the process. We get Nestor into our lineup. He's 6'5". He's got hands that more like a 5'10", 5'11" guy. He's still one of those big, lanky, rangy guys that is going to fill out. So that could be a real special piece for us. And then right now we anticipate going into the import draft with a fairly high pick. I feel pretty comfortable whether it's Nestor plus 1 pick or the 2 picks we have, depending on how it plays out. It's going to be important, but I feel comfortable that we're going to have 2 pretty good import players here come next September.
Has there been any discussions with Nestor or his family or group or anything like that at all?
Not a lot of late. We had discussions in the summertime, Kevin. Stayed in contact with his agent in the in Czechia. And we just kind of all agreed that this is what Vaclav wanted to do this year, play another year in Muskegon. We just essentially said we respect that. We'll leave him alone. We don't want to be hanging around the rink down there. He's able to go there, concentrate on what he needs to do in Muskegon, get through that season, get prepared for the NHL draft, and then we'll see where we're at in the summer.
Yeah, like the NHL team always has a say as well, so things can change this summer, can't they?
Things can change. I think with I think with the rule changes,
That too, yeah.
I think the majority of NHL teams are going to look at Nestorsil and are going to think that Regina will be a great place for him to play. And hey, if you believe the rumors, the Muskegon might be in the OHL next year.
Exactly, right.
And I don't have any inside information. Just it's out there. So who knows how this all plays out?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
I just know that Nestorsil's not going with Muskegon to the OHL.
Yeah, I was like, I know there's a lot of, like how the Wenatchee situation played out, right? Like there's, they're talking Muskegon and what's the other one? There's the two teams, right? So
I think I think the rumors out there were Youngstown and
Youngstown,
Muskegon,
that's the one.
right?
Yeah. So yeah, you have to disperse those players, and then you're gonna have to do like a draft of the current OHL players. So it's quite the situation that would happen if two teams move into the league, right?
I would assume that it would be they would be considered expansion franchises.
Yeah.
So there would be some type of expansion draft, and then the one thing with the OHL is they draft 16-year-olds go right into the league, right?
Yeah.
So those expansion franchise, they might have they're probably going to be real young for a couple of years.
Yeah, disperse the teams and then start from scratch, basically.
Yeah. And those teams may have players that are in the OHL territory.
Exactly.
That want to go with them to the OHL.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, first we'll see if the OHL
That happens.
Let's see if they expand first.
Nothing's official yet, right?
No.
Yes,
But,
yeah.
I mean, the OHL has been public about wanting to expand,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah,
lots
let's
of
make
stuff.
it clear. There's no inside information here. I'm just talking about it like with the same rumors you guys have heard.
Yeah.
How about you give us a couple thoughts on all the new players? Zach Panalakis.
Well, work in progress. The guy that can really skate and has a really good skill set. We met with Zach the other day, and he's a little bit worried about points and that. I said, Zach, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about where you're at 12 months from now. He's another guy, along with Eglin, along with Mays, that are all late 07s. They've all just turned 17 here in the last few weeks or the last month or so. For me, Zach has good upside, good potential from a skating and skill set, and we'll see how he develops and how he grows.
Caden Brown, older guy, like you said, you bring in a little bit more experience. What does he bring to the table here?
Well, he's a veteran, and we have to be real careful that we're not throwing the babies to the wolves every night.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why John Babcock is so important. That's why Efren McNutt is going to be important. That's why Anthony Wilson and Zachary Shantz and these guys that have experience in the league and have played and have been in situations are there to lead, mentor, and support our young players. So that's a big thing with Brownie in terms of he's a veteran. He's played on good teams. He's got a good skill set. He scored a hell of a goal last night against Saskatoon on the power play. He just gives us I don't want to say a good complementary player, but in some ways just a good citizen, a good all-round player, can generate some offense and can help us be competitive game to game.
How about Keats Fawcett?
Yeah, Keats is I think you're going to really see Keats take off here. We talked earlier about guys that, how guys settle in their new environments. I think Keats is a guy that take a little bit of time getting settled and getting comfortable here. I think it was a little bit of a shock for him to be traded, and because he had such a great year in Calgary last year. Obviously a new coach, and obviously Calgary making the decision to go for it. But I think he's getting settled here. I think he's got some confidence. I thought he played his best game as a Pat last night. He's a guy that skates well, plays hard. I think he's going to be a real good player for us for the next couple of years.
And then the other piece there, Reese Hamilton, obviously, like we talked about, he was fourth overall pick. He was like high upside. How's his kind of progression? What do you want to see from him there?
Well, he was really and you've seen our team kind of like going into this game tonight here. Like our last 4 games have been real good. Mm-hmm. You know, Vancouver, we should have beat PG. If it's not for Ravensburgen, we outshoot them 34-20. Played a great game. We should have been up 4-0 after 1 in Edmonton. So you can kind of see it coming, and part of seeing that coming was that's when Reese was starting to come. That's when he was getting settled. That's when he was starting to get his confidence back. He played his best game for us in Vancouver, and then he played his best game for us in Prince George, and then into Edmonton. So, you know, this is a guy that, you know, 8 goals, 31 points as a 16-year-old. You know, Tanner Molendyke had 18 points as a 16-year-old. Like, whatever happened in Calgary happened, different system, different structure, different way to do things. That's not my business. It's hard enough to manage one team. I don't need to try and manage 2. So, you know, Reese is an elite skater. He's an elite offensive talent. He floats on the ice. Unfortunately, had a little bit of a bang up there in Edmonton. We don't think it's going to be long term. We're hopeful that he'll be back right after the break. But obviously, Chris, when you look at what we've done here, Hamilton and Mays are guys to build around.
Mm-hmm. Now, bringing in Matt Peranich, like I don't want to say he's in the same mold, but he's kind of got that offensive upside. A little of a smaller kid, but he sure can skate. That's for sure.
He's going to be. I would say this based on his size right now, and not to. Right now, he projects to be a very good junior defenseman, offensive junior defenseman. That's not to say Matt can't play at a higher level, because his edge work, his feet, his hockey sense, his skill. And what's the higher level? What's the higher level for a player like that? But we really like him. He's another one of those kids. Him and Mays are real tight. Like they're best friends. If you go look online, there's a story about Mays.
We saw that.
Helping a woman out, and he was driving to Julian's house, and he called Julian's dad because he's a detective to help the woman. I believe she was having a seizure in the middle of the road. So great story, and great on those young guys to take that initiative. But two things about the Peranich deal yesterday. One, it was an opportunity to add more young talent to our group. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we're able to do that and be aggressive because of the draft capital we've built up. Yeah. So I'm excited about that piece coming in, and I don't believe that you can have 2 or 3 defensemen that are 5'9", 5'10", but you can have one real good one, and I think we got that in Peranich.
Yeah, interviewed him after the game, and he definitely has some confidence. Like he said, he asked for a trade, and he wants to be in the lineup every night, and he wasn't getting that Medicine Hat, and so he wanted to be somewhere else. So you like to have some confidence too, don't you?
Oh yeah, and you know what? And sometimes when you're a smaller player at this level, you have to have some swagger.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And and he's got some swagger, and. I can tell you that after it was a tough deal for Willie Desjardins, with how much he liked Matt, and he told me after the deal was done, he said this guy is probably the most committed player, or one of the most committed players we had in Medicine Hat, mm-hmm. in terms of wanting to get better and working at his own development to get better. So and you can see that he's got swagger, he's got some energy. I'm excited to. You look at Deschamps, Braden Smith, Reese Hamilton, and Peranich now in terms of a core of 4 17-year-old defensemen. Let's watch that grow up, and what's that going to look like in 2 years when they're all 19 years old?
Oh, yeah. One player we haven't seen yet. What does Ephraim McNutt bring to the team? Like, we don't know much about him or anything like that. What does he bring?
Well,
Other than being a 19-year-old leader type guy.
yeah, well, top 4 defenseman on a very good team, first off, so that tells you what Mark Lamb thought of him. Averaged over 22 minutes a game in Prince George this year. The last game he played before he got hurt, he played over 27 minutes against Victoria. He had games this year where he played in excess of 30 minutes for Prince George. So he's a workhorse. He's a leader. This is a guy who broke his wrist and ran the stairs every day while the team was practicing. And this is a guy, what we really like about the guy, this guy through his own work ethic and his own development has turned himself into a pretty good player in the league. And he's going to play with structure. He's going to play solid. He started the year very well. He's got 2 and 8, 10 points in 15 games played. He's a guy that can give you flexibility and versatility in terms of killing penalties. He could be an option on the power play at times if need be. Is going to help our young players along with John Babcock. Our research on this guy, we didn't hear one bad thing about him. Like I got a text from a former player who coached him that told him he's one of the best humans he's ever worked with. And then Caden Brown had played with them. They were close. So real long-winded there, but Kevin, quality player, quality person. I think a guy that's going to do a lot of different things and a lot of good little things and good details for us on the back end. And I think will give us an option as a real good 20-year-old as well.
And a right-handed shot.
And a right-handed shot. Thanks for getting that in there because I forgot that.
Yeah, no. Right-handed shot defensemen. It seems like, oh man, they're hard to find, aren't they?
They're diamonds. Well,
yeah.
You know what? You look and sometimes you look. Like I think Yakimchuk at 7 to Ottawa in the NHL draft was a lot about putting a right-handed. Obviously a very good player, but putting a right-handed shot.
Jumped up.
And this is just me. I don't have any inside information. But this is just me. I look at the draft board there, and I know these players well, with my Hockey Canada experience. And you got Sam Dickinson a left shot. You got Carter Yakimchuk a right shot on the board. So I'm kind of looking at. I like to you're in the game. You like to study those things, and I'm thinking. I bet that Ottawa's got Dickinson and Yakimchuk pretty close on their list. And they decided to go with the right shot because of how valuable that is.
That just is that extra little thing where, okay, we have a left or a right. What do we take? They look similar. We take a right because it's tougher to get a right, isn't it? So.
Well, draft philosophy, a lot of times, and for us, is best player available. But sometimes when you get to your list, and if everything's equal, then you can draft by position. You can draft by type of player. And then when it comes to D, you can look at if it's a toss-up between two guys, you might go with the right shot.
Yeah. So you mentioned bringing in the prospects here over the Christmas break. You kind of thought, okay, seeing some guys, and has there been a couple that have stood out to you that have made some improvements this year from your viewings or what you've heard from the scouts?
Yeah, we're pretty positive with what we've seen out of the 09 group right now. Aiden Wagner's dealt with a little bit of an injury, and he's only played 10 or 11 games. He should be 100% when we get back after Christmas there. But for the most part, our guys are progressing well. I got the opportunity to see Hanby and Mathis Paul play head-to-head while the team was in Kelowna. I was really pleased to see where those guys were at. Hanby, as a 15-year-old playing in a league with a lot of 17-year-olds, I could tell his coach at OHA really trusts him. Face-offs, PK, matchups, stuff like that. Mathis Paul is going to run over people. Like he's going to be a big, heavy power forward. I think he's the one guy right now that out of our entire 09 group that might be the most ready to compete for a spot on our team in the fall. And then those kids got the opportunity to skate with us in Kelowna on the day of our game there. Unfortunately, they stuck around and watched the game, which wasn't very good. I even left in the third period and sat in the coach's office downstairs, but that is what it is. Some tough nights along the way. So we're excited about that group. The American contingent in terms of Hordachuk and Senya. Now with the rule change, Camden Saperzan at Shaddix, I think we're going to have a good shot to get him. I think he's got the ability to be an exciting young player. We're pleased. A lot of good things in our 09 age group. We like how Carter Haney has progressed at rink in Manitoba as a guy that could compete for a spot on our team. I think the 09 age group is, even though we were missing the 4th overall pick in that draft, I think that that draft's going to have the ability to give us some good skill, some different types of players with some size, and give us some good depth.
How did you guys come about Owen Senya? Just a training camp, we show up, we see this name.
It's all Rhett Gordon.
All right, Gordon?
It's all Rhett Gordon. He deserves the credit for that. He had him as a draft in the U.S. prospects draft. We obviously, no one ended up taking him. Part of that was not a lot of people knew about him. He was playing on kind of a different academy run by his dad. Peter, who was a Hobie Baker winner at Colorado College and played a little bit in the NHL in St. Louis. So Rhett worked hard, got him to our camp. He got to our camp, and we're a day or two in and said we got to get this guy signed.
He looked like a veteran out there.
Yeah. So we're excited about him. Owen's coming in here with the group of 9 that's coming in after Christmas here to spend 6 days around our team, do some development. This is something I've done since early in my time in Moose Jaw. Development camp in the summer is important. Mini development camp around Christmas time when the players have a break. When we get on the road, or the ability to bring Drake Mooney in to spend a few days backing up Pine here. I believe that it's invaluable to get our prospects around our players, around our coaches. Just watch how we practice, watch how they train, watch how they prepare, see what the standards are to play this level, see what the expectations are from our coaches. I think it's invaluable, and we try and do it as much as we can.
Yeah, it gives them a taste of what it's like to be a Western Hockey League.
Get some comfortable, instead of just coming in training camp in the fall, they're just blind, right?
Exactly.
So, kind of off ice things, but what do you what can you do yourself other than put the best product on the ice to help re-engage this fan base? Because we all know that there's a little bit of maybe disconnect lately. What are your kind of thoughts there?
Well, for me, it's just what you said, Chris, is that that getting this team to a level where people are excited about it, and people see a trajectory where we're going to get better, and that we're going to be competitive. That I want our team to go into every game every night to try and win. I want our team to work as hard as they can every night. Some nights we're just not good enough, and sometimes maybe we're just not experienced enough. We're too young, but we need to compete and we need to work hard. But the priority for me in terms of my responsibility is to get this team to a talent level, that it's an exciting product, and we're going to give ourselves a chance to win and play meaningful games in February, March, April, and May, and get people excited about our group. I want to try and be as transparent as I can with our fan base. I think in my first year here, I kind of tiptoed around where we were at and where we were going, because I still was still figuring things out. But now it's very clear where we're at. It's very clear what we need to do. It's very clear that we're executing a plan. This is, I know you guys have a real loyal following around, a lot of our most important, all our fans are important, but our season ticket holders, people that really want to zone in and be up to speed on everything about the Pats, they can get from you guys. And that's why I talked to Dante and then talked to Kevin yesterday about having this conversation. And yeah, we understand that, it's a tough couple of years. We're going to do everything we can to take a step next year. But for now, I'm asking for patience. I'm hoping that our fans, even starting last night, and we didn't have Hamilton in the lineup, but are going to start to see that, there's some real good young players coming in here, that we've got a plan, that we're going to do everything we can to get better, and ask for that patience and ask them to support some real good young players as we grow here.
Looking at the roster as it sits, only 6 players are here from the beginning of last season. Did you ever, in your wildest imagination, figure you'd make around 20-ish trades in a year and a half?
No. I didn't. And Kevin, what I would say on that note is the reason I say no, I wouldn't have anticipated that, is because I didn't know. I didn't know that we might have to go to that extent. But now I know that we had to go to that extent. And, we talked about this too, is like, 2 of those trades were a little bit of an anomaly for different reasons. Yeah. But, in my opinion, in terms of my evaluations, and my opinion and my evaluations involve everybody in the organization, whether that's Gord Pritchard as our CEO, whether that's our coaches, Dale Durkach, Dale McMullen. We work through a process in terms of evaluating this and how are we going to get it right, and I believe in the plan and the trajectory that we've kind of looked at is the reality was this could be a lot longer than what I think it's going to be, without, you said it earlier, tearing it down to a certain degree and doing what we're doing with young players and draft capital. Is this going to be 4, 5, 6 years, or is it going to be 2 or 3? And we're working towards that. It's going to be 2 or 3, but 2 or 3 and doing it the right way. And when I talk about doing it the right way, that goes back to the trades are one part of it. Trades are one part of it. Making good trades, adding the right players, adding the right draft capital, building up that draft capital. You got to build up that draft capital because whether you're drafting or whether you're making moves, you need to have those assets. Yeah. But the twofold part of all of that is you got to have a commitment to play your young players in these situations to get better, and that's what we're doing.
So with all these trades, how long does your battery last on your phone? How much time have you been spending on that lately?
It's you know what, it's I would say that it's been fun. Yeah. I'd say it's been exciting. I'd say it's been challenging, and I'd say at times it's been a little emotional or a little sad too, just in terms of some of the decisions you have to make.
Yeah, tough decisions, right?
Tough decisions. We talked about Tanner Howe. So, like this, this part of it for me is like the importance of it, the challenge of it, getting it right. Like this isn't easy. Like, and at the end of the day, what I would say is that a lot of times fans don't understand some of the moves we make or why we would make them. Sometimes there's things that go on behind the scenes, or that things that nobody knows about, that are reasons that we make trades, and for whatever reason we don't really expand on those. We make the deal and we move on. A lot of things go into these moves, and So for our leadership, from our ownership group to Pritch to myself and our crew here, like you have to have some level of gumption, or like we're putting ourselves out there in terms of
This is a big job.
this is a big job. We're making a lot of tough decisions. We're making a lot of moves, and in some instances along the way, we're making moves where we're not going to be very good at times, and you saw what we went through in terms of the night in the night in Kelowna, and then the night in Victoria, and we've kind of worked ourselves out of that. I like where we've got ourselves to the last 4 or 5 games here. I think we've got a young group that are starting to get some confidence and are started gelling, and I think we're going to be a fun team to watch here in the second half. We might not win as many games as we lose, but I think we're going to put ourselves in a position where we're going to be in a lot of games, and then we'll see how the year plays out leading into the draft in May. But from a collective of the organization and the support we're getting, and I understand that we're putting ourselves out there in terms of making a big step here in terms of making these decisions to move forward and making sure we get it right, and we're taking those steps that we need to in the next year or two.
So, with all these trades, you got any left this year in you?
The deadline is a little ways away.
Yeah. You know what? I there could be some tweaking. I don't see anything major. With the draft capital we've built, we give ourselves the ability to, if something comes up with like a Peranich available,
you have options.
That you have options, you have flexibility, you can be aggressive in certain situations when, we've built the draft capital we have. So we'll see how it goes. But, right now, if we go through January 10th with minimal changes, we're pleased with where we're at in terms of the goal, adding young players to our group, adding draft capital. We're pleased where we've gotten to at this point.
Are there any plans to name a captain in the second half? Or is it just going to be running with the A's?
I think we could talk about it, after the 10th, but I think right now we'll just, probably run with the A's, and really at the end of the day that, our leader right now is John Babcock. This guy is, this guy's a phenomenal young guy. What he's doing for Braden Smith and Deschamps and the support and the leadership he gives those guys. I've been really impressed with John as a person. Obviously, he works real hard. He's a competitive guy. So he's our, right now he's our leader, and I don't know if we'll put the C on anybody moving forward. I probably just see us riding it out with John leading the group as, I guess, the top A.
Co-captains or whatever.
Co-captains or the top A.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I think that's about all we have. But what are your kind of final thoughts? You got anything else to add for the fans out there?
I don't think so, Chris. I think you guys gave me the forum to talk about what we were doing. Talk about the plan, talk about the difficult decisions. I want to thank the fans. We know that we know there hasn't been a lot of success, not only the last couple of years, but in general for a while. And I can tell them that we're collectively working hard to put a product on the ice that they'll be excited about, that they'll be proud of it, and then work to our eventual goal of winning a championship again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But so on that note, I appreciate everything you guys do for the club. Kevin, your historian title and all the work you do in those areas, and the great job you guys do on the podcast here. And I appreciate being able to have this chat again with you, and look forward to doing it again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Kevin. Well, that was an hour and a half. I knew it was going to be long, but
Didn't expect it to be that long,
but
it was an interesting chat. Got to hear a few things that we may have not known. Delved a little bit into the Connor Bedard era and stuff too,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because he had a hand in that with the Hockey Canada and stuff. So that's
yeah, right.
neat.
Something that we didn't plan on going down the road of, but hey, that's the way these discussions go. It takes them on a mind of its own. Sometimes you just go down the path and you just roll with it, right? I mean, we had
Exactly.
a list of questions. We had a whole bunch of stuff. A couple things we didn't touch on, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
we covered a lot of stuff
We did, though.
in over 90
Yeah.
minutes.
So yeah, that was
We
great.
thank Al for being on the show, and hopefully
Yeah.
you all enjoy it. And yeah,
Yeah, and we'll be back very soon with our Christmas break episode, unofficial mid-season review. We're going to have Dante and Drew on again, so we'll be chatting with those guys very shortly, and that'll be out soon, so we have lots of Christmas break listening, a couple of good episodes here for you guys. So with that, we'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and yeah, we'll see you before the New Year.
have a good one.